You threw out food this week. You did. A few soft potatoes with little white sprouts crawling out of them. Some carrots gone limp in the drawer. Maybe a couple of eggs you weren't sure about. So out they went, just to be safe. I used to do the same thing, every single week. Here is what I learned, and it stopped me cold. An Amish grandmother in the county next to mine kept her eggs fresh for a full year without a refrigerator. She kept potatoes firm from October clear through spring. She never owned a single gadget, and she almost never threw anything away. That is not a story. That is a habit. A plain, boring, repeatable habit that most modern kitchens forgot on purpose. And there is one method at the end of this, written down in a government bulletin from 1911, that will let you store eggs on your counter for months. You can set it up today in under a minute with things you already own. Nothing special. Nothing to buy from some catalog. I still remember the moment it hit me. I was standing at my trash can with an entire mesh bag of sprouted potatoes in my hand, about to dump $8 into the garbage, and my neighbor asked me why I didn't just keep an apple in the bag. I laughed at her. I actually laughed. I thought that was nonsense. She was right. I was wrong, and I had been wrong for years. So let me start there, with the potatoes, because that one stung the most. Here is the question nobody ever answered for me. Why do your potatoes sprout so fast when the Amish keep theirs solid all winter in a cellar with no temperature control at all? I always blamed the potatoes. Cheap potatoes, I told myself. Old stock from the store. So I bought fancier ones. Same result. Sprouts in 2 weeks, green skin, that soft, mushy feel, and into the trash they went. The answer is a fruit. One apple. A ripe apple gives off a gas called ethylene. You cannot see it or smell it, but it is real, and it is powerful. For most fruits, ethylene is the ripening signal, the thing that makes a peach go soft. But with potatoes, that same gas does something strange. It tells the potato to stay asleep. It stops the eyes from waking up and sprouting. The United States Department of Agriculture studied this exact thing. Their research on potato storage confirmed that ethylene exposure suppresses sprouting. Farmers who ship potatoes use ethylene rooms to keep them dormant on long journeys. The Amish grandmother did not read that study. She did not need to. She learned it from her mother, who learned it from hers, going back further than any of us can trace. So here is what you do. You take one ripe apple, and you tuck it right into the bag or the box with your potatoes. That is it. One apple for every 10 pounds or so. Keep them somewhere cool and dark. A cupboard away from the stove, a basement step, the back of a low shelf. The difference is not small. Potatoes that sprout in 2 weeks will hold firm for 2 months, sometimes 3, with that one apple sitting quietly among them. I tested it because I did not believe it. I put one bag with an apple and one bag without, side by side, same shelf, same day. 3 weeks later, the plain bag was throwing sprouts like a garden. The apple bag looked like the day I bought it. That was the first time I felt it. That little sick feeling of realizing how much I had thrown away for no reason at all. But an apple only fixes the potatoes. The carrots were still dying on me. And that is where this gets bigger. Because your refrigerator, the machine you trust to keep everything alive, is actually the thing killing your carrots. I know how that sounds. Stay with me. A carrot is mostly water. When you pull it and toss it in the crisper drawer in a loose plastic bag, that water starts leaving the carrot and escaping into the air. That is why it goes limp and rubbery. It is not rotting. It is drying out, right there in the cold, in the drawer you thought was protecting it. The Amish never had that problem, and their carrots came out of storage crisp in February. Their trick is older than the refrigerator itself. Sand, damp sand, packed in a box or a bucket, with the carrots buried inside so they do not touch each other. The sand holds just enough moisture against the carrot skin to stop the water from escaping, but not so much that it rots. It recreates the exact conditions of cool, damp earth, which is the only place a root vegetable was ever meant to live after harvest. This is not folklore. Root cellaring in sand shows up in farm household manuals going back to the 1800s. Carrots, beets, parsnips, turnips, all of them stored in damp sand or sawdust, staying good for 4 to 6 months. The Cooperative Extension Services in cold states still publish these exact instructions today because nothing better was ever invented. It just got forgotten. Now you might be thinking you do not have a barrel of sand or a root cellar, and I hear you, and I promise I am coming to you specifically in just a bit, because I lived in a small place too. Hold that thought, because right now I need to tell you the part that made me angry. For years I believed my food was going bad because that is just what food does. I believed I needed the newest sealed containers, the vacuum machine I bought for $60 that broke in 4 months, the special produce bags with the little holes, the drawer with the humidity slider I never understood. None of it worked better than an apple and a box of sand. Somewhere along the way, somebody decided it was more profitable to sell me a solution every single week than to let me keep a habit that costs nothing. Fresh food that spoils fast is food you have to buy again. A gadget that breaks is a gadget you replace. And a person who believes the old simple way is dirty or unsafe is a person who will keep paying for the new complicated way forever. That is what got taken from us. Not the food, the knowledge. The quiet confidence that you could keep your own food alive with your own 2 hands and things you already had. The Amish never lost that confidence because they never handed their kitchens over to a company. And every trick I am giving you comes straight from that unbroken line. So let us talk about the thing in your kitchen that spoils the fastest and costs the most. Cheese and butter. I used to buy a nice block of cheese, wrap it in that same plastic it came in, and within a week or 2 there would be that hard, dry, cracked edge, or worse, a spot of mold, and I would cut off half the block and throw it away. Butter I kept in the fridge so hard I tore my bread trying to spread it, or I left it out and it went rancid and sour. The Amish grandmother did neither, and her cheese lasted, and her butter sat soft on the table year-round without going bad. For cheese, the enemy is plastic. Plastic traps moisture against the cheese, and trapped moisture is exactly what mold wants. But cheese is alive in a way it needs to breathe a little. So the old method is to wrap it in a cloth lightly dampened with vinegar, then in wax paper or parchment. The vinegar is a natural mold fighter, the cloth lets the cheese breathe, and the wax paper keeps it from drying to a rock. A block that browned and molded in 1 week will hold clean and fresh for 3 or 4. Cheesemongers have quietly done a version of this forever. Vinegar has been used as a mold barrier for cheese storage for well over 100 years. It is not a secret to them. It was just never told to us. For butter, the answer is even older, and it is one of my favorites, because the first time I saw it I could not believe it worked. It is called a butter crock, or a butter bell. You pack softened butter into a little cup, and you fill the base of the crock with about a ½ inch of cold water. You turn the cup upside down into the water, and the water forms an airtight seal around the butter. No air touches the butter, and air is the only thing that turns butter rancid. So it sits on your counter, soft and spreadable, staying fresh for weeks. You change the water every few days, and that is the whole chore. The French have a name for this, and the design goes back to the 1800s. But versions of the water-sealed butter keeper show up all across old rural kitchens, including the plain communities, because before refrigeration, keeping butter usable was a daily survival problem, and they solved it beautifully with nothing but a bowl of water and a little upside-down logic. I tested that one too. Butter on the counter, sealed under water, for 2 weeks in summer. It spread like a dream and tasted perfectly clean. The same butter left in a covered dish went off in 4 days. Every one of these tricks made me feel the same 2 things at once: relief that I finally knew, and a slow burn about how long nobody told me. That slow burn is exactly why I sat down and wrote everything out, the whole of it, the way I wish somebody had handed it to me 20 years ago. What you are getting free in this video is real, it works, and it is a handful of what I found. In the books I wrote, you get the full protocols, step by step, the exact amounts, the timings, the way to check whether your own kitchen is holding food or leaking money, and what to do when a batch goes wrong instead of quitting the whole practice. You will know how to keep produce firm for weeks with nothing but what is already in your drawer, how to sharpen a blade to a razor edge on a plain stone in a couple of minutes, and how to clean your entire house with baking soda, vinegar, and boiling water. No farm, no gadgets, no apps. If you want the complete collection, scan the QR code right there on your screen. Link in the description, pinned comment. Take it at your own pace, one habit at a time, the way these families always did. Now, I know some of you have been sitting there thinking none of this fits your kitchen, and I have not forgotten you. But maybe you have been sitting there this whole time thinking, this is fine for someone with a farmhouse and a cellar and counter space to spare, and I live in an apartment with one small kitchen and one small fridge. This next part is for you. I mean you specifically. I spent years in a place exactly like that, and I need you to know that not one of these ideas requires land, a cellar, or a single square foot you do not already have. Start with your greens, because leafy greens are the fastest money you lose. Lettuce, spinach, herbs, they turn to slime in days. Here is the whole secret, and it fits in your existing fridge. Moisture control, in reverse of what you think. Take your greens, and instead of the plastic bag, wrap them loosely in a clean, slightly damp cloth towel or a few sheets of paper towel, then set them in a container or a loose bag. The cloth holds gentle, even moisture and absorbs the extra that makes leaves rot. Greens that slimed out in 3 days will stay crisp for a week and a half. That is the same principle as the sand, shrunk down to fit a drawer. For fresh herbs, treat them like a bouquet of flowers. Trim the stems, stand them up in a jar with an inch of water, and set the jar in the fridge or on the counter out of the sun. Parsley, cilantro, and dill can go 2 weeks or more like this. Instead of the 2 days they last shriveling in the plastic clamshell you bought them in. For your onions and garlic, the rule is dark, dry, and apart. Never store onions and potatoes together, by the way, because the onions give off moisture and gas that make potatoes sprout faster. Keep them in separate baskets with air around them. A paper bag with a few holes punched in it, tucked in a low cupboard, will keep onions firm for a month or more in the smallest kitchen there is. And here is the reviving trick that saved me the most guilt. When your carrots or celery have already gone limp, do not throw them out. Cut a slice off the bottom and stand them in a glass of ice water for an hour, sometimes overnight. They pull the water back up and go crisp again. Wilted does not mean dead. Wilted just means thirsty. I threw away pounds of perfectly good vegetables before I learned that a limp carrot is not garbage. It is a carrot asking for a drink. None of that needs a cellar. None of it needs a gadget. It needs a jar, a towel, a glass of water, and the willingness to stop trusting the plastic. Now, why did we ever stop trusting all this? Why did your grandmother maybe know some of it, but you got none of it? Because starting in the early 1900s, the whole country was taught, very deliberately, that the old ways were dirty and dangerous, and the new ways were safe and modern. When the electric refrigerator arrived in homes in the 1920s and 30s, it was not just sold as a machine. It was sold as proof that you were clean, that you were forward, that you had left the backward past behind. Anyone still keeping eggs on the counter or butter underwater or roots in sand was made to feel like they were living wrong. And there was money in that feeling. A cellar full of sand does not need a payment plan. A butter crock does not break and need replacing. But a refrigerator does. And the food that spoils faster in careless storage sells more groceries. And every year there is a new container, a new bag, A new gadget promising to fix a problem your great-grandmother never had. The Amish stood outside all of it. They did not reject refrigeration out of stubbornness. They simply never surrendered the knowledge, because they never handed their self-reliance to a company that profits when they fail. That is the whole reason a grandmother in a plain community can still do things your modern kitchen calls impossible. Which brings me to the one I promised you at the start, the one written down in 1911, the one that sounds impossible until you do it. Keeping fresh eggs, unrefrigerated, for a full year. I need you to understand how much this shook me, because eggs were the thing I threw out the most out of pure fear. I never knew if they were still good. I would toss half a carton just because they had been in there a while. Millions of us do this. And it turns out the people who never had a refrigerator almost never wasted an egg. Here is the science they knew without knowing the word for it. A fresh egg comes out of the hen with a natural coating, and the shell itself is covered in thousands of tiny pores. Air and bacteria get in through those pores over time, and that is what spoils an egg. So the whole trick is simply to seal the pores. If air cannot get in, the egg stays fresh for months and months. The old method is called water glassing. It was documented in United States Department of Agriculture materials in the early 1900s, and it appears again and again in farm bulletins and household guides from that era, including that 1911 period when preserving the season's eggs for winter was a matter of getting through the cold months. Back then, hens slowed down and nearly stopped laying in winter, so families put up eggs in spring and summer, when eggs were plentiful, to eat them through the barren months. You take a clean glass or ceramic container, you mix a solution of pickling lime, which is calcium hydroxide, with water, using about 1 ounce of lime to each quart of water. You gently lower and clean, unwashed, fresh eggs, pointed end down, making sure they stay fully submerged. Then you cover it and set it in a cool spot. That is the entire process. It takes you under a minute to start. The lime solution seals every pore in the shell completely. No air gets in, no bacteria gets in, and those eggs stay good for 8 months to a full year. People who do this crack them open a year later and find them fresh enough to fry. The critical part, the part the old-timers stressed, is that the eggs must be unwashed and fresh, straight from a farm or a good source, because washing strips that natural protective coating off the shell before you can seal it. Store eggs are usually washed, which is why farm-fresh eggs are what you want for this. And the reason store eggs must be refrigerated in this country while eggs in many other countries sit on the shelf is exactly this coating. In much of the world, they do not wash it off, so the eggs do not need the cold at all. Sit with that for a second. The refrigeration you were told eggs absolutely require is only required because the natural protection was removed first. The Amish and the old farm families never removed it, or they sealed it right back on with lime and water, and they carried fresh eggs through the whole winter on a shelf. I did it myself. A small crock pickling lime, fresh unwashed eggs from a neighbor. Months later, I cracked one over a hot pan, half expecting disaster, and it stood up firm and golden and cooked like it was laid that morning. I stood there in my kitchen, a little stunned, thinking about every carton I had ever dumped out of fear. That is the whole thing. That is what a 1911 bulletin knew, and I did not. Knowledge that was written down, printed by the government, practiced in every farm kitchen in the land, and then quietly allowed to disappear because there was no profit in a family that never wastes an egg. But it did not fully disappear. The plain communities kept it, the old farm wives kept it, a few stubborn grandmothers kept it, and now you have it too. You can hand it to your own children, and they can hand it down again. And that chain, the one that was almost broken, starts running through your kitchen instead of a company's. So let me leave you with the thing that matters most, and it is not any single trick. For years I thought I was a wasteful person, a careless cook, someone who just could not keep food alive. I was not. I had simply been robbed of the plainest knowledge my own great-grandparents took for granted, and sold a broken replacement for it. over and over. Getting that knowledge back did not just save me money, it gave me back a little bit of myself. The feeling that I can take care of my own house with my own hands without asking anyone's permission or paying anyone's price. If you are the kind of person who hates throwing away good food, who is tired of buying gadgets that break and tips that never work, who would rather trust something you tested with your own hands than something printed on a package, then you already belong with the rest of us who are digging this old wisdom back up out of the ground. Now I want to hear from you, and I want you to actually tell me this time, which one are you going to test first? The apple in with the potatoes or the water-glassed eggs? Type it in the comments right now. Just the words, apple or eggs, so I know which one you are starting with. Do not just think it, write it. This little community only grows when you speak up. And if you want the rest of what these grandmothers knew, stay with me, because next I am going to show you the way they kept meat safe for months without a freezer, using one common ingredient and a method most people today would swear is impossible. That one changed everything for me, and I cannot wait to hand it to you. You already threw out food this week. Next week, you won't have to. And that quiet feeling of nothing going to waste, of being the one in charge of your own kitchen again, is the whole thing they never wanted you to have back. Welcome back to it. Before you go, let me tell you where this goes next. Inside the Amish kitchen circle, we keep going, right where this video stopped. And if something isn't clear, you can ask me directly, and a real person, me, answers you myself. You won't be doing it alone. So many home cooks just like you are already inside with us. Just point your phone's camera at the code, and you can cancel any time. Now, if you love these old kitchen secrets, I want to show you the Amish way to keep onions fresh for a whole year. No rotting, no sprouting. It's starting right here, so stay with me.